Well, hello, and welcome to Om's Garage. Today we're going to be replacing the turn signal module on my McLaren 12C. Alright, so if you've been following my channel, I picked up my 2013 McLaren MP4-12C. And we had an issue with the turn signal. It was broken. There was a little plastic piece that's right in between the module and the lever that was broken, and we got it repaired. It was a temporary thing, it works, but I wanted to make sure that I replaced it with a fully functioning and something that's hopefully not going to break again. So we're going to be going and we're going to start that process today, replacing it. Now this part I picked up used. I picked up from England. And it was shipped over. It was over, I think under $300 for a used part. So it's just the lever. It's got the module. I'm probably going to end up reusing the one that the car currently has, because everything else is just a physical, mechanical, plastic or metal piece. So I'll make sure that it matches my car. So let's get started. All right, so the first thing we're going to need to do is, I've rolled the windows down because I am going to have to disconnect the battery, and I'm going to leave the battery disconnected for a while so that there's no charge in the system, because I am going to be removing the airbag, and just as a safety measure, we're going to make sure that there's no charge in the system. So, first thing we're going to do is going to access the panel here. First, you remove this, rubber liner. Remove the other one. And then this whole thing comes out, but you have to remove some screws down here. There's going to be Phillips. There's going to be 4 of them there. And there's going to be one in the middle. It's actually 5. It's held on by Velcro. All right, so these are going to be T25. And you're gonna have a whole bunch of plastic fasteners that have just Phillips screws. And you're gonna remove a bunch of screws all around. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So you're gonna pull all these plastic tabs out. This whole tub will come out. We're gonna go ahead and disconnect the battery, but we also need to disconnect this this connector there also, because I think that has to do with the computer. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna disconnect the negative, and I'm gonna disconnect that afterwards, and I'm gonna leave it disconnected for probably a good half hour. This is a 10 millimeter. All right, so we've disconnected that. And then we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna try to disconnect this. So we're gonna pull that red tab back, and then once that's back, actually goes back further. All right, so we're gonna leave those 2 disconnected. All right, so now we're gonna be, the battery's been sitting for a while. Here's the other, the issue that we were having with this broken tab. I ended up pulling that off. Because we're going to be replacing this whole thing regardless. But what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to go, there's these little divots here. There's one on either side. And you're going to, I'm using a T25. So you're going to want to poke a hole through there. And there's going to be something that's going to end up releasing. You can see the airbag kind of moving. So I'm there. I'm going to go do that. And then I'm going to go on the other side and do the same thing. But you can see that's actually releasing that airbag. So you'll feel some resistance. When you'll feel it push back on you, and that's when you know you're in the right spot. So we're gonna go on and do it on the other side. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna push on this and pull that out. And we're gonna go to the other side and do the same thing. And that's gonna release this airbag. And that's what the other side of that looks like. Now for this, we're going to take a small screwdriver. Just going to be careful. And we're going to release this tab here. And we're going to go for the other one. And we're going to release that as well. Once we've released that, we can pull straight back on that one and straight back on that one. And then this here just pulls straight out. And there we have your airbag. That's what the backside looks like. And that just goes in that orientation. And they're all color coded, so you can put those back easily. All right, I just want to show you what happens when you have to release this airbag. You go through this hole, and what happens is you see that little clip there. This clip here is what releases the airbag. So when you push in, it moves that clip, and that's how you can release that airbag. There's another one on the other side. So that's how that works. All right, so we're going to use a Torx bit. It's a 10. We're going to use it. This is a 1/2 inch because there's probably going to be a lot of torque on this. And we're going to use one of these in order to try to break that loose. So I'm going to use an extension just because it sits a little bit further back. And we're going to just try from there. Try to get out of here in order to get some leverage. There you go. All right, so we just broke it loose. And what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to use there's a line that they had drawn previously. I'm going to use a torque wrench to try to gauge and see how many pounds of torque are on that, since I don't know the torque specs for this. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use this to try to tighten that. 30 pounds, and we're going to see if that lines it up. All right, so we're not at 30 pounds. We're going to do 40 pounds. Move it up to 45. So I'm going to say it's around 45. We're going to go ahead and we're going to break this loose again. All right, so there you have your bolt. It's a pretty big bolt. And we're just going to set this aside. Now there is a line on the wheel here to line up the wheel with the bolt down there. So we're going to make sure that we maintain that. Actually, I'm going to get a wax marker just in case, and I'm going to mark on different spots there just so that we have no issues with that later. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to mark this steering wheel. Shouldn't really matter, but I just wanted to, just in case. All right, just be careful with these cords when you're taking this off. All right, at this point in the video, there's a step that I missed that I should have done, which is tape down that center wheel. That center wheel is the clock spring, and I didn't tape it down. So eventually, when I was videotaping, I ended up moving it out of place, and that caused issues later on. So make sure you tape that down so it doesn't move. And there you have your steering wheel. So that's what your steering wheel looks like, both sides. And this is actually pretty interesting. If you look at the back side of it, the way that the up shift levers and downshift levers work, it's like cantilevered. All right, so it looks like this is a T10. That green dot that you see is actually to remind you where the center of the clock spring is at. So make sure that it stays right where it's at. That's why you need to tape it down. All right, so you can remove these little side pieces here just by unsnapping them. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just start removing them. It comes right out. Once these two side pieces are out, then you can remove this whole piece here, just carefully. And might be a cable still attached behind there. There is a cable still attached, so you want to be careful. I am probably not going to unattach it. All right, so we removed the screws there. I just put this aside a little bit. And right now we're going to try to see if we can open this carefully. All right, so that's removed. And this is the orientation for this. You can see all the grease that's in there. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove this piece and put everything back together as it is in the other piece. So this is like that. The spring is underneath there. And we're going to grab the piece from the donor. Now we're going to grab the donor piece and we're going to pry this open. Now you're going to see that this slides right out. So that's out. That's what that piece looks like. This is the donor piece. I'm not going to reuse this part because that has the chip. I'm not sure if that chip works. If that chip works, and also these pins are all bent up. That's how I got it. But this is what we need. So now we're going to go ahead and we're going to remove this piece here. All right, so there you go. That piece is removed now. We're going to set this one right in. Just making sure that these are all the same. Looks exactly the same. So we're going to try to set this in. All right, so that's in. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to replace that cover. This one here. This little tab has to go in. Make sure all the controls are working. Forward, back. You can see this little piece comes in and out. So everything's working. We're going to go ahead and start putting these screws back. All right, so that's back in there. Now we're going to go ahead and carefully put this back. And it goes into place. We'll end up putting these screws back in. Before tightening that, I'm going to go ahead and put these covers back on. It looks like these covers are just held on by a little clip. These things have a little lip here. If you see this lip here, that needs to go, this little cover needs to go on top of that. So we're going to go ahead and remove that first. So we're going to put this underneath first and then push in. And then this, once this tightens down, it'll hold that in place. So we're going to do that on both sides. All right, so we're going to start putting these screws back into place. All right, so those screws are in. Now we're going to go ahead and put the steering wheel back on. So we're going to grab our steering wheel. We're going to go ahead and we're going to put these cables for the airbags through here, through this hole here. All right, so these cables are through. And what we're gonna do is we are gonna plug this other cable back through here. All right, so that's through there. Pull these cables through. Cables are through. Now we're gonna put this back on. So we're lining up these red marks that I put on there before. All right, so we're going back. I have these lines that I lined up, these markings that I put. So I'm just putting everything back the way that it was. All right, so now we're gonna go ahead and then looks like everything's lined up with these red lines. And I'm gonna go ahead and I'm going to place this back on, this bolt. And just be careful not to cross thread and also not to catch any of the wires. All right, so we're gonna torque this. I think we set to 45. And you can see the white line is pretty much lining up. There's a white line that was there, I guess, from the factory. So that's on there pretty tight, and we're good to go. All right, so now once we've got that done, we're gonna go ahead and reconnect the airbags. Yellow goes to yellow and blue goes to blue. And then it looks like you have a ground here. So we're gonna go ahead and hook up the ground. Then we'll hook up the blue. It can only go in one direction. And then you push down this orange tab. Same thing with the other one. And then you put the ground, this cable here. Tuck all the cables in. We're just gonna set it here, and we're gonna grab that Torx bit in order to push the holes, push the little clips. So that one's in. Let's do the other one. And it's in. All right, so that's gonna be it for the install. It should be the horn. And you know, it's secure all the way around. And then we have a turn signal that works now. And I'm gonna take a lot better care of it than the previous owner. All right, so we're gonna plug this battery back up and see what happens. Okay, so the car didn't want to start or anything. I hit the unlock button and everything kind of came back alive. So let's start her up. Left turn signal, right turn signal, high beams on. Well, lights have to be on for that, but everything's working. All right, so that's gonna be it for the removal of the airbag, removal of the steering wheel, and also the repair of the turn signal. Just as a word of caution, in the video, I talked about taping off the clock spring. That's that little wheel. After you take the steering wheel off, there's a wheel in there that moves left and right. It has a green dot in it. And that wheel has to remain centered. In doing so, because I was trying to videotape this, there was no video out there on how to do this. So I was kind of experimenting and learning as I went along. In trying to get the camera angles and everything, I ended up, since I didn't tape it, it ended up moving. And then I put it back, and apparently when I put it back, it was probably the opposite direction, or either way, it was 360 degrees where it was supposed to be. So one of the issues that caused is that once I put it back, everything was fine. There was no errors, there was no airbag errors or anything. But what happens is once I rotated the steering wheel the first time when I drove it, that either stretched something out or you know, it caused some kind of issue. And obviously I was getting an ESC, I think, light. I was getting a power steering fault, and there was like a PAA fault or something like that. So I was getting several error messages, and that was all related to the clock spring. So just as a word of caution, and I talked to the mechanic, I ended up taking it into McLaren. They did a diagnostic on it. They were able to see that the clock spring was out of whack. You know, it was 360 degrees in the wrong orientation. So once they repaired that, they got rid of all the other error codes. The only thing was the airbag, the levels for the voltage were off, and that could be related to the clock spring being overextended or whatever because it was in the wrong position. That's something that I'm still working out, but I'm just letting you know because that's, you know, something that that shouldn't have happened, and that's why I'm letting you know. You know, I talked to the mechanic there, and he says if the clock spring had been put back in the orientation that it was in originally, then none of these issues would probably have come up. So if you're going to try this, you know, just do that knowing that you could end up setting off an airbag light, which is what happened with this car. And you know, it's something that I'm going to problem solve, and it's part of, you know, doing, you know, being one of the first to kind of try these things out. So I'm sharing that knowledge with you, and you know, hopefully, if you have to do this, you can do it without getting, you know, the air lights that I got. And McLaren wanted $4,200 to do this, to replace that turn signal. I think they replaced the whole steering column. That's why they charge so much. But I was able to get the part for $250. I tried it out. It worked. You know, I got my turn signals. I can drive it now. It was originally like in limp mode when those errors came up, but I was able to drive it to McLaren. They got rid of the error codes other than the airbag. And that's something that I still got to resolve, but the car's drivable. It's not a big deal. I'll figure it out down the road. But for now, hopefully this video will help you out on how to remove that airbag, how to remove the steering wheel, and if you had, like me, a broken turn signal, and it doesn't have to be a turn signal, it could be any one of the 4 modules that are on there, the power steering, and the other stocks, the windshield wiper fluid and things like that, then you can replace those. You know, you shouldn't have to replace the whole steering column. If you can get to those screws like I showed you with these little modules, so you have these little modules, can be replaced. You know, this is the original one that I had that was broken. And if you can get a hold of one of these, McLaren, I don't believe, sells them individually. They want you to buy the whole steering column. But if you can get a hold of one of these, then you can replace the entire thing. And if you can get a part from a different McLaren, it's just a little plastic part inside here. So you can replace, technically, you should be able to replace just the handle and the little inner plastic piece. So that's going to be it for today. Hopefully this helped you out. I know there wasn't any videos that I could find online, you know, good videos on how to remove the steering wheel on McLaren. This should be the same procedure for most McLarens. Obviously this is the MP4-12C, but hopefully this helped you out. If it does, go ahead and leave a comment. If you haven't done so already, go ahead and subscribe, share, like, and also follow me on Instagram. You all take care and stay safe.